Oh, I just got myself a cup of tea. Mmm. It's peppermint tea. So soothing. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me for another Stories with Sarah reading. Tonight, we're going to read Bees and Wasps. We're going to learn about bees and wasps today and kind of understand how they live their lives and what they do day to day, the life of a bee. And we're just going to learn a little bit today. Let's see, maybe they make honey. How do they live day to day? What types of food do they eat? And, we'll kind of dive into it and, have some fun. So, a little fun fact about me is I'm actually allergic to bees. Are any of you guys allergic to bees? Maybe you know, maybe you don't know yet, but I found out I was allergic to bees, and so now I have to carry an EpiPen. So if I ever get stung, I have to inject myself with my EpiPen so that I'm okay. And a lot of people have EpiPens. Some people have EpiPens for peanut allergies, but I have a bee allergy. So maybe you have one, maybe you don't. But today we're going to learn a little bit about the life of bees and wasps. And wasps, they're a little bit different than bees. They look a little bit different. So let's find out. Get your favorite drink. Maybe it's apple juice, maybe it's tea, maybe it's milk, maybe it's water, maybe it's, I don't know, soda. Probably not. Don't drink soda right now, but all right, guys, so let's start with our story time. Are you excited? I am. Okay, let's begin. And also, too, you might see Frost, my cat, my white cat. He might come into the film. He might come into the shot here, and we just don't know. I don't know when he's gonna pop up. So, if you see him, say hi. Hi, Frost. Okay. Let's begin. Bees and Wasps. This book was written by David Cutts and illustrated by Janice Keneally. Or Keneally. I'm not sure, but. What's buzzing in the garden? If you look closely, you may see a bee. Bees are amazing insects. They are so busy. Did you guys ever hear the term busy bee? It means you're buzzing around doing all kinds of stuff. Okay, so that's what that means. Can you guess how many kids or how many kinds of bees there are? There are over 20,000 different kinds of bees in the world. Here's a carpenter bee. I believe they eat wood. Here's a honeybee. They make honey. And here's a bumblebee. So you'll see all these kinds of bees when you're playing outside, and they're all a little different. There are also thousands of kinds of wasps. Wasps are relatives of bees. Hornets and yellow jackets are two kinds of wasps. So you have wasps, and hornets and yellow jackets are a type of wasp. And here we have the wasps. If you ever see kind of like a paper mache looking type nest hanging from a tree or that kind of thing, don't touch it. Get an adult and let them know that it might be a wasp nest, because you don't want them to come out and sting you. Okay? So here's a yellow jacket. Okay, and you can see how they're gonna look a little bit different. Their bodies are gonna have more of like a shiny shell type look instead of like the fuzzy, you know. They're gonna be yellow and black usually, but the bumblebees and carpenter bees and honeybees will have more of a fuzzy look. Bees and wasps are insects. Like all insects, they have 6 legs and their bodies are divided into 3 parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. And like many insects, bees and most wasps have 2 pairs of wings. They also have 2 feelers on their heads called antennas. Most bees live alone. They are called solitary bees, but a few kinds of bees are social bees. These bees live in groups called colonies. You might have heard of bee colonies before. And a lot of times those are associated with honeybees. They work together to make honey. Honeybees are one kind of social bee. They help each other more than any other kinds of bees. Okay? And here's a little leaf cutting bee, but he's a solitary bee. He's by himself. A colony of honeybees lives in a hive. Okay? Here's the hive. The hive contains something called a honeycomb. The honeycomb. The honeycomb is made of beeswax, and beeswax comes from the wax glands inside the bees' bodies. So the bodies make the wax, the beeswax that's going to house the honey. The wax glands would be over here in the bee's body. Bees often build their hives in trees, but sometimes they choose a more protected place, such as high up in the rafters of an old barn. Tens of thousands of honeybees may live in a single hive, but there is only one queen bee in a colony. All the other bees are either worker bees or drones. So there's only one queen bee. There's the queen honeybee. Oh my gosh, she's big. She's bigger than all the other bees. The queen is the only bee in the hive that can lay eggs. That's all she does. During spring and summer, a queen honeybee may live for about 5 years, laying as many as 1 million eggs during that time. That's crazy. Most of the other bees in a honeybee colony are workers. Workers are female bees, but they cannot lay eggs. They do all the work of the colony, including feeding the young, gathering food, building honeycomb cells. There's the honeycomb cells. And guarding the colony. The male bees are called drones. There they are. So the drones have only one job. They mate with the queen or with the queens of other colonies. Whether it is part of a natural beehive or a beekeeper's hive, the entrance to a beehive is a busy place. Remember that term, busy bee? Each day, thousands of workers leave the hive to look for food. They get their food from the flowers. That's why you always see bees on flowers. What kind of food honeybees collect is called pollen. Workers carry the powdery pollen back to the hive in their pollen baskets. Pollen baskets are not really baskets. They are hairs that grow on the bees' back legs. The pollen from flowers sticks to these hairs, making it easy for the bees to carry. Another kind of food that worker bees collect is called nectar. Nectar is a sweet liquid found inside flowers. Bees soak up or suck up this nectar with their tongues. They carry the nectar back to the hive in their honey stomachs, which are located in the bees' abdomens. Then the bees turn the nectar into honey. The honey is used to feed the colony. Have you guys ever had honey? You probably have had honey from time to time. Honey is used in baking. You can put honey in your tea. You can use honey in place of syrup. You can use honey as a natural sweetener in pretty much anything. Speaking of honey, I'm going to have some of my tea with honey. Yum. If you could look inside a beehive, you would see a honeycomb made of thousands of tiny rooms called cells. The bees build the cells from beeswax. Each cell has 6 sides. The honeycombs hang from the hive in rows that are back to back. Here's the honeycomb. Here's a cell. Here's a larva, which is a little baby bee. Here's the egg. Here's a big version of the honeycomb with all the bees, the worker bees, and you've got a drone here. Different cells in the hive are used in different ways. Honey is stored in some, pollen is stored in others. Still, others are used as a sort of nursery. The queen bee lays 1 egg in each nursery cell. Egg, egg, egg. The eggs are very small, about the size of a pinpoint. Oh, there's the queen. She's the biggest bee. After the queen lays the egg, it only takes about 3 days to hatch. Out crawls a tiny worm-like creature called a larva. Worker bees have special glands in their heads, and these glands make a food called royal jelly, which is full of protein and vitamins. Worker bees feed royal jelly to larvae for 3 days. Then, for the next 2 days, they feed the larva something called bee bread. Bee bread is made of honey and pollen. Soon, the larva spins a silk cocoon. See the cocoon? And the worker bees use beeswax to close the nursery cell. Inside the cocoon, the larva becomes a pupa. Finally, about 3 weeks from the time the egg was laid, out comes a new, fully grown worker bee. It chews its way out of the nursery cell, ready to join the work of the colony. There's the life cycle, pretty quick. During the summer, worker bees live for only 5 or 6 weeks, but in that time, they have many different jobs. Each job is carried out as the worker reaches a certain age. The youngest workers have jobs in the hive. Older workers are food gatherers. These pictures show the jobs worker bees perform and the age at which each job is carried out. Let's take a look. We have 1 to 2 days old. The worker bee's job is to clean out the cell. 3 to 6 days old, it's supposed to feed pollen to the larva. And 7 to 11 days old, it feeds royal jelly to the larva. 12 to 15 days old, they're supposed to build cells made of wax. 16 to 19 days old, they're going to receive and distribute food. Looks like to each other. 20 days old, they're going to guard the entrance to the hive. And 21 to 42 days old, they're going to gather food for the colony. When a food gatherer finds food, she shares it with the other bees in the hive. That's nice. You always want to share if you can with your friends. Soon other food gatherers head for the same food supply. How do they know where to go? Well, the worker who has found food does a special little dance when she gets back to the hive. Let me see so you can see this. The kind of dance she does shows the other workers in which direction the food supply is located and how far away it is from the hive. The circular dance is performed when a food source is near the hive, and then a tail wag dance is performed when food is more than 27 yards from the hive. That's cool. They have to communicate. Oh! Look at the funny bear. Aw. Worker bees are very busy. As they do their chores, they check on the pollen and honey supplies. They look into the nursery cells. They examine the honeycomb to make sure the hive is large enough. And they keep the queen safe. Bees have many enemies, including bears, who may ruin a hive while looking for honey to eat. We all know bears love honey, especially Pooh Bear. Other creatures such as skunks like to eat bees. Worker bees use their venomous stingers to attack these predators. And that's what I was saying. When you see bees and wasps and things like that, be careful because they will sting, they can sting, they don't sting all the time, but they will try to protect their hive. In the summer, heat can build up inside the hive. Whether it's in the beekeeper's hive or a natural hive, the heat can melt the beeswax cells. So hundreds of worker bees go to the hive's entrance and turn themselves into portable fans. As they fan the air with their wings, they push cool air in and hot air out, just like a regular fan. Wow, these bees are really smart. It's amazing. If a queen lays too many eggs, a beehive can get crowded. And when this happens, some of the workers leave the hive. The queen goes with them, and this is called swarming. Scouts look for a good spot for a new colony. When one is found, the workers and queen build a new hive there. The bees left in the old hive have more room now. At first, they don't have a queen, but before long, a new queen hatches. Then she and the drones fly out of the hive on a mating flight. Soon, the new queen begins laying eggs, and life in the hive goes on. Beekeepers are people who raise bees for their delicious sweet honey and for beeswax. The beeswax is used for candles. Here's a candle. It's also used for polishes and many other helpful products. Beekeepers build their honeycomb cells on special panels inside wooden hives. The beekeepers can take the panels out to gather the honey and beeswax. If they move slowly, beekeepers have found that they usually do not get stung by their bees. And as everyone knows, it's wise to avoid being stung by a bee. Among honeybees, only females can sting. And a few hours later, they die. So once a honeybee stings you, they usually pass away. So always, move slowly. Try not to make any sudden movements. Back away slowly if you can, if you come in contact with a bee. Bumblebees can sting many times without dying. Here's a bumblebee. They're fuzzy. They're large and fuzzy. Looking yellow and black bees are different from honeybees in other ways. Bumblebees are much larger than honeybees, but their colonies are smaller. Instead of building a hive, a queen bumblebee builds a nest on the ground or in the grass. So bumblebees, they'll have their nest, on the ground, and honeybees will usually have, their hive in a tree or something like that. Mm-hmm. First, she builds something called a honey pot out of wax and fills it with nectar. Next, she makes a wax cell for a nest and lays her first eggs in it. These eggs will develop into worker bumblebees. In late summer, the queen and workers will raise new queens and drones. After mating with the drones, and new queens will hibernate during cold weather. In spring, the young queens will begin the new colonies. There is the honey pot and the egg cells. Bumblebees and honeybees are social bees, but most bees are solitary bees. They live alone. Solitary bees make several different kinds of nests. Carpenter bees drill tunnels into branches or pieces of wood. Each tunnel has several cells, and each cell contains pollen, nectar, and an egg. Wood chips glued together with bee saliva separate the cells, as you can see. For a carpenter bee, leaf-cutting bees also live in tunnels, and these tunnels may be found in branches and pieces of soft wood or in the earth. Each tunnel is lined with cells made of leaves and saliva. Mason bees build their nests out of clay and saliva. The nest may be on a stone, against a wall, or even in a snail shell. Burrowing bees or mining bees dig burrows or tunnels in the earth. Sometimes several bees will share the work of digging one tunnel, but each female bee makes her own private tunnel off the main tunnel in which she lays an egg. Here's a mining bee. Most female solitary bees die at the end of summer. But before a female dies, she has a lot to do. In each cell of her nest, she puts some pollen and nectar. Then she lays her eggs in the cells and seals the cells with waterproof wax. The next spring, the eggs hatch. The young bees are hungry. They eat the food their mother left for them. After that, they are on their own. There's the young bee coming out. He's ready to go. Inside view here. Wow, look at that nest. This is a wasp. So you guys might, have recognized this. This is a wasp. It's a little bit different than a bee, like we talked about. Okay, so wasps are related to bees. Most wasps lead solitary lives. The female mud dauber is a solitary wasp that makes her nest out of saliva and mud. That means they're alone a lot of times. They're not traveling in packs or working together as much. Other wasps are social. Social wasps build their nests out of paper. To start a colony, a queen chews plants and wood, then shapes the mixture into separate cells for her eggs. The mixture dries to a papery material. When the eggs hatch into worm-like larvae, or grubs, the queen feeds them insects. 10 days later, the grubs have turned into worker wasps, and the workers collect food and add to the nest as the colony grows, and the queen lays an egg in each of the cells. Paper mache kind of looking gray nest that you'll see sometimes hanging from, different places outside. They could be small, they can get really big. Hornets and yellow jackets are social wasps. Yellow jackets may put their nests almost anywhere, in the ground, against a fence, or hanging from a tree. There's the yellow jackets. Hornets often build their nests in trees, but sometimes they choose nesting places that offer more shelter. Some nests are very large and contain thousands of hornets. Uh-oh. There's the hornets. Looks like they're darker in color. Bees and wasps are fascinating insects, and the bee family is also very helpful to people. Honeybees give us honey and wax. Wasps kill many insects that are harmful to humans. One of the bees' most useful activities takes place when bees carry pollen from flower to flower as they buzz about. The bright colors, sweet smells, and tasty nectar of the flowers attract the bee. When the insect lands on a flower, pollen may stick to its legs. Then, when the bee flies to another flower, some of the pollen may brush off. This helps to pollinate the plants so they can produce fruit and seeds. Many important crops of vegetables and fruits flourish with the help of bees. So in a way, plants and bees, they all help each other. It's all a circle of life. We need bees, okay? Plants give the bees nectar and pollen to eat, and bees help to pollinate the plants. So it's a give and take. You can't have one without the other. One summer day, visit a park or garden. Listen for the telltale buzzing of a bee. Then, from a safe distance, stop and watch the bee. And stop and watch the bee at work. It is one of the most interesting sights in nature. Okay guys, I just want to say thank you for reading with me and learning about the bees and wasps, and we covered a lot of different different types of bees in this book, and it's interesting to kind of read about how they all have different types of living environments and how they have lay eggs and gather food and communicate with each other. And again, when you're outside playing, take a look at the bees. You don't have to get close to them or try to grab them, but just watching them do what they love to do best, which is go after the plants and the flowers and gather that pollen, that nectar. And they're helping nature at the same time. We have to have both bees in our world and a healthy environment for them to live in. And so it's really interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to join me next time for our next reading, and have a great night. Bye.